Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
Like that it affects almost all races.
Like that it affects millions.
That it can be unbearable.
That it's the most common genetic blood disease in the country.
But awareness and understanding are still far too uncommon.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
And that's a disease too.
Call the 211 info line to learn more.
Hello, we would like to welcome you to one more episode of Face Sickle Cell. My name is Virginia Pertiller. I serve as Executive Director for Citizens for Quality Sickle Cell Care, and we serve the northern part of Connecticut. And today I have a very special guest with me. She serves in many capacities, and I'm going to have her introduce herself to you. We say that you stay with us throughout this dialogue. You're going to learn some things, and you're going to hear some things that perhaps you never heard before. So let's face sickle cell together. I would like to introduce to you Miss Daileann Hemmings. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Daileann Hemmings. I am a nurse at Hartford Hospital, high-risk OBGYN. And I also am Vice President of CQSCC. I volunteer in a lot of different capacities around Connecticut, but right now that's been working on sickle cell has been my focus, both at the organization Citizens for Quality Sickle Cell Care and at Hartford Hospital.
And what gave you the desire to want to participate in sickle cell specifically?
Well, my nephew was born, will be 5 years ago now. Brandon was born 5 years ago with sickle cell. It's one of the disease. It's a disease that he inherited from his parents. So he has what's called SC disease. And I learned more about sickle cell. I knew about sickle cell with going through nursing school, but I didn't know as nearly as much as I know now. And so I wanted to be informed and make sure I put myself in a position where I'd be able to know what the best care was. You know, being a nurse and understanding evidence-based practice and what that really means. I wanted to be abreast of the new technologies and all that was being talked about in the media and otherwise about sickle cell. So Brandon has been my motivator to learn more and in hopes to find a cure.
That's awesome. So tell me what the experiences have been since you heard that he, was born with sickle cell. Now you know that that's a part of the family. What has happened in your family since that incident? Well,
when Brandon, it's funny because, it's always that 25% chance that someone could actually have the disease when there are two parents that come together to have a child. In every case, there's a 25% chance that the child can come with the disease or come with nothing at all, or the 50% chance they could come with the trait. So, of course, when we learned that his father and my sister had the trait, we were hopeful that maybe he would fall in that 75%. But he ended up coming with the disease. And so we had to make a lot of changes with being informed, becoming a part of the family advisory board that CCMC has, and just making sure we knew how to care for the disease on a day-to-day basis. Understanding that caring for sickle cell is not just at the time when there's a crisis, which is typically what patients have. With sickle cell disease, it's the structural change of the red blood cells that isn't able to carry blood or oxygenation to the body in the way that normally healthy cells can. So with sickle cell, you have to realize that with that change in the cell, there's issues with oxygenation, which can lead to, of course, organ failure and then organ death. So we realize that since these cells don't move as fluid as it typically would in the healthy people or people who do not have sickle cell disease, we know that restrictions of the vessels is not what we want. So of course keeping Brandon warm at all times has been something that's been important. And our family knows, we have to keep him warm. We need to keep him hydrated. We look into making sure he's well medicated. And we start educating him early.
Great.
Yeah, to make it so
Great.
that we empower him in some ways to understand how he can go about managing his disease. So we don't want this to be something that, you know, he gets older and there's this wake-up call.
Absolutely.
We kind of want to coach him along from now in understanding, oh no, you need to drink your water, you need to eat your fruits and vegetables, you need to let us know if you're uncomfortable. But Brandon is a resilient little guy.
I'm sure.
If you meet Brandon, he's fun-loving, full of energy. You look at him and he looks like a normal 4-year-old, right? You encounter him and you're kind of like, oh, you can't tell what's different, which unfortunately in some cases lead to some of the stereotypes or some of the misconceptions, I should say, about the disease, because it's not physical. It's not one that, you know, people can look at and automatically know that this little 4-year-old is living with this pain.
It's invisible.
It's invisible.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with something that's invisible, you have to make sure that people who are caring for them are well educated about what's happening, because of course you're saying there's pain, but there's nothing other than the blood test to show that, you know, his blood levels are off that would indicate that. So that's part of what my work is to educate not only Brandon, speak with my family, but also the patients that I care for, and even my colleagues, and making sure that they're aware of what this can look like, and giving them examples of what people have told me about it.
So let's get into some of the facts about sickle cell. Who does it affect? You know, where is it in the world? Could you speak to some of that in terms of who it affects? Yeah,
so sickle cell is all over the world is the thing. Primarily, it was found in Africa because it was a defense to malaria. So people who had the trait were, of course, able to not get that kind of disease, which was great. But there wasn't enough education or research or information at that time for people to realize that. But when individuals with the trait were planning their family, that they could possibly have a child that has the disease. So it affects everyone, though. We have a really integrated world, and we have to realize that it's not only one population of people that are affected by this disease. I do think that many people are walking around with the disease not knowing what it is, and so part of the problem is people aren't getting tested. You know, Connecticut, within the last 10-15 years actually have now testing that is a part of the newborn screening. So of course children that were born within that time until now automatically know that this is something that, you know, they may have, and the pediatricians are able to then counsel those parents if a child is born with the disease. But there are many who probably have no idea and have come up with all kinds of folk tales and all kinds of reasons as to why they think they're living with pain, not understanding that it could definitely be just a change in the body that, if it was cared for properly, could be managed.
So this newborn screening actually, it came into Connecticut in 1989, and so anyone like 22 or 23 would perhaps have been tested, but we know that Connecticut has become almost like a hub where people are coming in. We have a lot of refugees coming in. We got a lot of immigration that's happening. So some of these people are coming in with this disease, but they really don't know.
They don't.
So what would you recommend in terms of how people can get tested to find out if they are carriers of the trait?
Right. I mean, you could definitely go to your primary care physician. I would encourage people to go to their primary care physician and ask if they're finding that they're having issues with pain crises, if they're finding that, you know, they feel almost debilitated by the discomfort that the pain sometimes causes. It should raise a flag, you know, that there's maybe something else going on here. It's not age. It's not arthritis. It's not the things that oftentimes people associate with pain that they know to link it to. And I mean, if nothing else, it's good to get tested, because we're learning more now that people even with the trait sometimes present with different different things that mimic what an individual with the disease might have.
I agree.
So it's interesting for people to just get tested and then start to have the conversations. Like, it should definitely be a part of what people communicate about when deciding to do family planning.
Yes.
You know, to go and get genetic testing. This, because I think unless someone actually encounters a person with the disease and understand what their day-to-day life can be like, will they realize that, you know, maybe it's really good for us to have that conversation.
Yes.
And see what that would look like if we were to have this child and what their life would be like.
Absolutely.
And I think that sometimes would make people think twice and make different decisions. I always say, you know, sickle cell, it's 100% preventable.
And that's the only education we have right now, is to speak about it and communicate about it. So our organization has been, and you're aware of this, that we've gone out to the high schools to talk to young people, because we know young people make decisions and they don't think about the consequences of those decisions until after the fact. So if we can reach as many as we can with just educating them about this disease, then I think they would be able to be informed citizens when they are planning their families.
Exactly.
And so much more needs to be done in that, because I think sickle cell has also become very silenced.
Right.
You know, there was a time when it was being talked about on a regular basis, but now I even hear people when we're out in the community say, "Oh, I thought they already took care of that."
Right. Well, you know, that's interesting, because there's no taking care of sickle cell unless there's a cure. And at this point, we know that there is not a cure for sickle cell. There's different ways that, you know, different medications that can be taken to try to help with some of the symptoms. You know, from time to time, Brandon may have to take narcotics just to help with, you know, comfort. He often has issues with even constipation, because that system slows down. And I mean, there's a lot of different systems that can get affected, and people need to realize that unless there's a cure, we can't silence sickle cell.
And when we say a cure, we're talking about a universal cure.
Absolutely.
Because there are some things that people can do. There's the bone marrow transplantation. But if you want to talk to that a little bit about how that is only for maybe a small, minute number of people.
And it is for a small, minute number of people, because with the bone marrow transplant, you need the same parents to have this child, in most cases, to have another sibling that has healthy marrow to be able to then pass that on to the next child. In some cases, people don't want to take the risk, you know what I mean? And in other cases, people don't even want to put their child through what it would be like to get a bone marrow transplant. So it's difficult. It's a lot of difficult decision making that comes along with what some are considering a cure now. In order for you to do that, you have to suppress the immune system, which you can consider the immune system of a child with, or a person with sickle cell disease as already suppressed to begin with. So the intense care and just modifying their environment is like different, and the time that they have to spend in hibernation, you know, can also affect the psyche. And I mean, just to touch on that a bit, we have to realize that someone living with a disease that causes pain on this magnitude, of this magnitude rather, that there sometimes are some issues that they have to deal with, and that coping in some cases are seen in so many different ways. You know, Brandon, I've seen him fight to the point where he could have pain and his mom would even offer to pick him up, and he's trying to go down the stairs, and he's like, "No, I'll go down on my butt." And that's part of what I want people to know, is that people with sickle cell want to live normal lives. You know, they want to have it as normal as they possibly can. They definitely want to function in society. They want to be contributors. They want to be parents. They want to have fun. They want to live those lives, that life, just like anyone else wants to. It's just, we have to realize that this disease, just like any other, sometimes stop them in their track.
Or you have to consider doing things in moderation.
Precisely.
You know, it's not that you can't do, or you can't go to college. You can go to college out of state. You can travel the world. But you just need to make those preparations in advance to know what the medical, you know, possibilities are in those areas, where to go in the event of something happening. But I think that the whole gamut of life is open to anyone who has sickle cell. Now, given that there are some people who may have more pain crises than others.
Precisely.
Because I think the other thing is that people don't realize that there's different types of sickle cell. So you said Brandon has SC. Some people have SS.
Right.
You know, so I think that that's not a knowledge that a lot of people have either.
Right.
SC actually is a little more not as profound as the SS. Would you say that?
I would say that. However, Brandon has had issues that had him present more like he was SS.
Oh, I
so
see.
even in the case where someone has SC, one might assume that it's a milder, case of the disease. But in Brandon's case, that hasn't been. No, Brandon has had, issues with respiratory. He's had to have blood transfusions. He's been, hospitalized for weeks at a time. He's definitely had some of the things that individuals with SS. Actually, so it's not one of those that you can grow out of, right? You don't get sickle cell disease and you have it as a child, and then all of a sudden you get older and you're like, you'll grow out of it.
Yes.
The way in which the disease affects you or affects individuals with it can be different. And I mean, depending on where you are in your life, I've had patients that told me, oh, I barely had to go to the hospital as a child.
Yes.
Then I hit puberty and everything changed.
Right.
Or some that they constantly had to go as a child, and then they got a little older and they felt that as they got older, their time spent in the hospital was shortened significantly. So you don't really know, and I mean it requires a lot of understanding and a lot of patience with the caregivers.
Yes.
I think, like my sister, for instance, she is a knowledgeable, really knowledgeable person. And I say all the time that Brandon is blessed to have her because she keeps herself informed. She connects with who she needs to in order for her to get the information. She has this binder of like Brandon's admissions and discharges.
That's awesome.
She goes into the hospital and she knows what the plan of care is.
That is awesome.
There's no question as to what's going to happen, and it's important for a disease that one could be this sensitive. The patient is in some case fragile.
Yes.
That you have someone that understands that you have to stay on top of things, and you need to know so that you can even start to prepare the child. Brandon knows that before he goes to the hospital, mom is going to make sure he has Emla cream at the sites, which is, a numbing agent, to make sure that that's placed at the sites where he's going to possibly have the needle or the tube be put into his arm. And these, again, are conversations that they have, and her just trying to make sure he's abreast of what's going on so that he can be a part of his care. He doesn't have to be frightened and, warm up. Brandon knows he wants to be a hemont doctor.
Isn't that absolutely
Brandon
wonderful?
Is 4 years old, and I'm already calling him Dr. Ricketts.
There you go.
Absolutely, because he's around hemont doctors, but it has been explained to him that these are hemont doctors, and they're here to help you.
Isn't that awesome?
So he knows some of the nurses, and he knows, this is going to happen.
I think that's awesome because I've encountered quite a few people with the disease, and like you say, there are some who have had a lot of incidents when they were younger, and then as they get older, they've kind of like felt a little better and haven't had to do the frequent going in and out of the hospital. But recently I met someone who had not been in the hospital in over 10 years.
Yeah, that is amazing.
And I'm always amazed at that because this whole thing about keeping a record of your encounters with healthcare facilities is so key. Because that's another part of what needs to happen in research as well.
Precisely.
Is that we need participants who are really up on the knowledge about this disease. So when they participate, they can expound and they can share some information. So one of the things I was suggesting to this person is that you need to keep a binder. Carry a little notepad with you with a pen and make sure you write down who's giving you service. How is that service? Is it satisfactory? Was there a problem? We need to really know those things because at CCMC, which is the Connecticut Children's Medical Center, there's over 180 children there
Right.
who are receiving services with sickle cell disease.
Right.
That's a lot of babies.
That is a lot of babies.
And the adults on the other side who's receiving that, I know, a good number of them. I know over 150 of them.
Yeah.
And so my whole thing is that we really have to begin to trailblaze some of the issues and the disparities
Right.
that they are encountering as adults, so that when those young ones coming from the children's hospital, they should be able to flow through easily.
Right. Transition is definitely important. I think CCMC has a really good plan, and so it's going to be important that the hospitals around, surrounding that, and even in the country, understands how to help with the transitioning from child care to adult care. I think there are some of the patients are nervous, or individuals are nervous when having to deal with that, because they don't know what that looks like.
It's true.
And there's a lot of people who are out searching for who will be able to care for them. Oftentimes people come to the hospital and they're and the care doesn't flow quite how they want it to. And it could just be because they're coming from someplace else where their expectations are different.
Yes.
And so I do think that we have to work on systems change, and we have to work on overall policy change. So we need to be able to make changes that are, we're not knocking at our governor's doors.
Yes.
We're knocking at the doors of, the people who are working in politics that can help to put in systems change to help widen the amount of people that are truly going to reap the benefits of change that can happen in Connecticut. And then start here, and then hopefully we can be a pilot, be a model, and be able to help people around the country.
Are there any things right now that you know of that are working towards policy change?
Well, right now at Hartford, our emergency room department is developing a protocol.
Okay.
They're developing a protocol for sickle cell patients that's going to address their pain management. The disease management part of it, though, will happen more so inpatient.
Okay.
Usually when people come in and they're having a pain crisis, that's what needs to be addressed. And Hartford Hospital is working on that right now.
That's absolutely great to hear.
So we're hoping there's going to be rollout that will happen with that really soon. And there's a multidisciplinary team that's coming together to work on a protocol or a guideline in the hospital.
That's absolutely
for
wonderful.
Those who do transition into inpatient. Of course, the goal is to keep as many people out of the hospital as possible. Make it so that, again, people are educated and informed how to care for themselves, so that they don't even have to come into the hospital. But for those who do, on those occasions, we definitely need to have a way that we're streamlining care, and everyone is on board with just the plan itself, from the admitting person to nurses to doctors, and make it so that, the length of stay is not nearly as long, and make it so that people can go home, because ultimately people will want to be able to go home and maintain things at home. They have responsibilities at home. In some cases, our sickle cell patients have children at home that they want to go home to and take care of. So, people don't necessarily want to be in the hospital.
No, they don't.
And so to be able to just, streamline care and help to move them out using the best evidence-based practice that we have right now is basically what we're working on.
And I think that UConn Health Center has really began and are in the throes of a great program. They have the first and only I know of on this side of the state, the Comprehensive Adult Sickle Cell Clinic. And so they've really worked hard. They have a wonderful program, and I'm not saying that it's completely 100%, but it has really improved so much. And there's a lot of people who frequent there for their services. And so because it's so successful in putting in some systems, I think people have heard about it, and they began to come and seek for their health services there. So there's a lot of work that we still have to do. In Connecticut and abroad. There's so much that needs to happen with sickle cell. We have 103 years that this disease has been known in the United States, and still we say there's no universal cure.
No universal
So we
cure.
need research, we need funds to, you know, make sure we can keep community-based organizations open. We need a lot of resources for people who are living with this disease. And I'm encountering a lot of different ethnic groups that have sickle cell disease. So it was known in the past that it was a black person's disease. But we know now that it's traveling across the globe. And so it becomes all of our issue. It's not just a black people's issue, it's all of our issue now. And so this has been really awesome. Do you think that we can meet Brandon for a moment? Do you think
I
he
think
would?
we should meet Brandon.
I think we should.
Brandon's here with us.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
How old are you?
4.
4. You're a big 4-year older. And so, do you know what we're talking about today?
Sickle cell.
Sickle cell. And what do you know about sickle cell? Can you share your story about sickle cell?
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything right now? That's okay.
That's all right.
That's
We're
fine.
so glad to meet you, because I think that having you on and being introduced to our audience only begins to really emphasize that this is a lifespan disease. So when you're born with it, until we find that cure, you know, most people live with it. And so we can see he's a 4-year-older, very viable, very agile, you know, looks like, you know, the Board of Health here. And so it's an invisible thing that we are encountering. So it's so great to have you on, Brandon, to meet our audience. I'm glad to have you here.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. So we're going to wrap up, because I think that at this point in time, I have one final question for you, Daileann. If there was something that you could do or say to our audience today about becoming involved and becoming more aware and knowledgeable about this disease, what would that be?
It would be, you should definitely connect with CQSCC if you have any questions, that we are here and available. We are definitely an advocacy organization that can help to answer questions. You should feel supported and encouraged to be able to move forward with anyone that you know, or if you're one that's suffering with the disease. You should join us. We have our walk and our dinner every year. We're definitely in the process of trying to inform and educate and support individuals with the disease. So come on aboard. Any way that you want to support and help will actually help the organization and hopefully help us find the cure that we're looking for with this disease.
Absolutely, that's great. And so how you can touch base with us, you have been watching Face Sickle Cell, and we have Miss Daileann Hemmings with us today, and Brandon Rickett as our guest. But you can reach us at 860-223-7222. Our website is www.cqscc.org, and we have 2 offices. We have one in Hartford and one in New Britain. So if you need to call us to just make an appointment, volunteer, we are open-armed. We love to have you come and join the effort. This is a movement, and we hope that you would join us. We thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that we'll come again with another episode, and we hope that you will continue to listen and learn more about facing sickle cell.